a chance for the prize is waiting here in my eyes. You hardly look at me now. With every beat of my heart, I wanna make a new start, but I don't seem to know how. We are the mongrels underneath the table, fighting for the leavings, tearing them to shreds. We are the mongrels rolling on the floorboards, unaware of the banquet up above our heads. We are the mongrels underneath the table, fighting for the leavings, tearing them to shreds. We are the mongrels rolling on the floorboards, unaware of the banquet up above our heads.
Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Mavis Staples and Grammy-nominated vocalist Joan Osborne hit the road in Solid Soul, a concert tour in which the singers perform R&B and soul standards in separate and combined sets. Heather Longley speaks with Osborne about the inspiration she gained from the Motown and gospel hitmakers of yesteryear. Osborne, whose song One of Us was a mega hit, talks about the opportunity to collaborate with Staples. She also describes how today's recording artists keep alive the passion of soul music.
So you started performing in the late 1980s in New York City, and then your name hit households in the mid-90s with One of Us. You've collaborated with a variety of musicians, including The Dead, Funk Brothers, Trigger Hippie, and now Mavis Staples. So what does collaborating with emerging or established artists do for you musically or personally?
You know, she's really a legend, a musical legend. Not only did she start making records as a teenager with her family group, the Staples Singers, but throughout the 1960s, they traveled with Martin Luther King and performed with him at many of his rallies. They started having hit records in the 1970s out of Stax, which is an incredibly important American label, and she's still making incredible records today. So for me, somebody to be able to tour with somebody like that, who not only has an amazing lengthy career and is, someone who's like a musical legend, but she also is still a really vibrant artist. For me, somebody like that is an incredible inspiration. It's an example of how even in this era you can have a long career, and your career, it doesn't necessarily have to be defined by just one moment or one thing, and it can stretch for decades, and you can continue to do great work up into your later years. And as somebody who's always really thought of themselves as a lifer in music, I really was not in it for I'm just going to become a rock star and then make a lot of money and retire. I mean, I always wanted to do it for the music. It's great to see someone who is doing exactly that.
Can you tell me how the Solid Soul tour with Mavis came together?
Well, the people who are producing the show, I had actually done a tour for them it was a collaboration between myself and the Holmes Brothers and a guy named Paul Thorne, and we went out on the road together, I guess about 7 years ago. So I have a history with this production company that's doing this. And I've been pretty vocal about my appreciation for Mavis Staples, and she's not only is she an amazing, incredible, legendary artist, but she is particularly for me somebody that is a hero, and I just feel like her voice and her singing style really influenced me a lot. So I've always been really vocal about wanting to do something with her, and I guess you put that into the universe long enough, and something happened with it. So perhaps it was from that, or it might have been something that Mavis reached out to them and said that she wanted to do that with me. I'm not really sure. Every time I've seen her, or we've done some benefit shows together over the years, and we did the Levon Helm tribute a couple of years ago. Every time I see her, I'm just basically bum rush her and tell her how much I want to work with her. So maybe it worked.
Good vibes must have done the trick. Yeah. So what was your experience growing up that led you to reinterpretation of soul music, soul standards?
I always loved to sing as a kid, and I did like to listen to the R&B station in Kentucky where I was growing up. I listened to that a little bit when I was like 12 and 13 years old, and was kind of fascinated by groups like the Spinners and the Shy-Lights, and I think even at that time the Temptations were making some great records, and the Isley Brothers, and I mean I liked all that stuff, but I don't think that was necessarily the moment where I was like, wow, this is really what I want to do for my living and my life. It wasn't until years later when I moved to New York to go to film school that I kind of fell into this music scene that was happening at the time. And a lot of it was American roots music and blues music and soul music. And I just decided that I wanted to find out everything that I could about it. And that's when I really started going out and buying Etta James records and Howlin' Wolf records and Sam Cooke records, and all the money that I should have been saving to go back to my next semester of college, I started spending on records and just really kind of giving myself an education in that way. And I think that was sort of the moment where I decided, I don't know how far I can take this, but I'm going to try to do this for as long and as deeply as I can. And, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm going to at least give it my best. And I guess partly the fact that I had been studying film, which as an art form is kind of diametrically opposed to the art form of singing. I mean, film, it takes a lot of huge teams of people and huge amounts of money, and at least it did at the time. Now you can make a movie on your iPhone, but back in the day, you had to have a large budget, and there's a lot of technical equipment, and it's a long process. And I think for me, stepping into something that was less intellectual and more just about being rooted to the spot in the moment, and there was something very immediate about it, and something really, of course, emotional about soul music and blues music. And it all, a lot of it comes from the roots of gospel music, which is, very intense emotional music. And I think there was something about that really just turned my head around and I think reached parts of me that I would never have reached if I had continued to do film, which I think I approached at least from a more intellectual standpoint.
What will your solo set during the Solid Soul tour consist of?
I think we're probably going to, touch on original music at least part of the time and covers at least part of the time, and try to build something out of both of those things that is, I think soulful. And I mean, that's always been a part of what the original music that I've done has had in it as well, as that aspect of soul. So I think that'll fall in nicely with what Mavis is going to be doing for her part of the show.
Okay. I mean, I know soul, the genre, the idea has sort of evolved since the 50s. What do you think encompasses soul music today, or what is a soulful performance to you?
Oh, man. Well, that's the thing about soul music, is it keeps coming back again as an ingredient in, rock music or pop music, and an ingredient in hip-hop music. And, you listen to a lot of the different, hits which are quote-unquote hip-hop. They have a sung soul chorus, and they're digging into that tradition. Or you listen to someone like Amy Winehouse, who comes, directly out of that tradition and is reinterpreting it for, her generation. And, I think it's all over the place. I think it's such a deep well of material that different artists use it in different ways. And, people write original songs and you would consider them rock artists, but, they have a grounding in soul music as well. So I think it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it surfaces all the time.
Experience gospel legend Mavis Staples and acclaimed singer-songwriter Joan Osborne in Solid Soul, October 27, 2015 at Penn State's Eisenhower Auditorium. For tickets or information, visit cpa.psu.edu or phone 800-ARTS-TIX.